We talked about some of the larger scale developments that you've been a part of, and on the brokerage side, on the development side, with some of your smaller scale projects, do you have a project that kind of stands out that you can just kind of walk us through, maybe high level, and maybe we'll get in the weeds on some parts of it, but from start to finish, what a small scale redevelopment project might look like from your end?
Yeah, it's fun for us. I mean, I think the general approach that we've taken is, we take on a larger project that we're providing consulting or whatever for, tax credits and capital stack. We've kind of taken that and put it onto a smaller scale, project, which most people don't do because of the brain damage and like you're hiring consultants, but because we are used to doing that work, it kind of works for us. So, I think our office building, which is at Newstead and Choteau in the Grove, it's like a 9,000 square foot building. We bought it for $300,000. I think we bought it in September. And I think had we not bought it and started stabilizing it by this next spring, we would have possibly lost the building. It was in that rough a shape. So it was like, it wasn't just a gut, like people say gut rehab and you tear off the, plaster and you get down to the studs. This was like, we're rebuilding floors, like you're rebuilding structure, like roof was like blowing in the wind. Like it was, you see up and you can look straight up to the sky. So it was like a heavy value add.
A lot of tuck pointing.
And so we GC'd that, and that was like my first time really doing that. And my dad was involved, so he helped, and that was great because otherwise I would have been like, what am I doing? No idea. But so we did that project in 2016, finished in 2018. I think all in we spent like close to 1.2 or 1.3 on like construction costs. I think we ended up getting close to $300,000 in state tax credits, historic tax credits, and $250,000 on federal. So it's a great deal. We got tax abatement on it, so we applied for tax abatement. So we brought in a federal investor to monetize those federal tax credits, which is not typical for a small deal because there's usually tons of brain damage and lawyer costs and everything. But because we had the relationships, it worked. And so it was super successful. We turned it into 5 like really high-end apartments. And then we were going to take a larger like storefront as our office, but we ended up finding a tenant that wanted that. So we're like, we'll cram into the back and take a small space. And so we've got a smoothie shop, Hello Juice. Great awesome spot if you guys are looking for smoothies, and they got some really good food now too. So that's a great spot. And then we're in the back, crammed in a small space, and most of Salient's in the basement. So it feels like a startup still because it's like, small, beginnings, but we're needing new offices soon. So
what would you say the biggest like lesson you learned there was? I know you kind of touched on the construction and stuff like that, but was there any one lesson that you'd take and apply to your next deals or have taken?
It's probably just like a very overarching theme where like every deal, I'm sure just like stuff that you've worked on too, like there's a lot of obstacles, like our budget, like when you get into historic rehabs, like we talked about earlier, like you don't really know the cost until you start digging into it. And it's like, things are usually worse than they appear from the outside. So, we would have like huge budget problems, like everything was getting blown out. And it's like, you gotta keep fighting through it and find ways to make deals work. And so I think just being persistent and being creative and not giving up, like that's really what I learned there. Like there's a ton of like technical knowledge, a lot of technical knowledge I learned on just how to general contract and how to make like the project work. But the overarching theme was just like, don't just take the first like piece of adversity and just be like, this deal's done. Like I'm going to get out of it and sell and try to get my money back. It's like, no, let's plug in and find a creative solution to make this thing work. So that's probably the answer I'd give.
So it sounds like being relentless, and that also applies to the brokerage side as well.
Yeah, I think so. A brokerage, you get a lot of no's. So if you take the first no, you're making some cold calls, and you get 99 no's to 1 yes or whatever the ratio is. You got to have thick skin and just move on to the next thing and fight through it. So yeah, very applicable.